Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and we are presented by SPI Logistics. And in this episode, we're going to be featuring a couple segments about underrated modes of shipping. What are underrated modes of shipping? Well, if you read the title of the episode, you probably already know that it's tugboats, barges, and canals. And in this episode, we're going to be featuring those different modes of shipping because they're referenced regularly throughout our industry. But in this conversation, Grace Sharkey and I are going to be exploring the who, the what, the why, the where, and the how. So let's first talk tugboats and barges. Now let's get into a little bit of the unsung modes in freight. Now, I wanted to bring this up because I love tugboats. I thought, I had this story idea that I wanted to do something on like the cute boats. And I was like, well, majority male audience, they probably don't care about a show that's titled like cute boats. So let's go with unsung modes in freight. And what brought this like to the top of my attention again is obviously that the big cargo ship that obviously ran into the bridge in the key bridge in Baltimore, caused the bridge to collapse. But they were finally able to have a controlled demolition in order to bring down, parts of the bridge that were holding the big cargo ship in place. Number one, I am not a number one fan of Sal Mercogliano, just throwing that out there again, just in case anybody needed a reminder. But his YouTube channel is, not love. When stuff like major events happen around the globe, like Sal is the first one to like jump on and make a story about it. And he just does, he is such a lesson in content marketing and how this man went literally from like a firefighter, former merchant mariner, college professor. He still does those jobs as well. The only former job is the former merchant mariner. He's still a college professor, still does like play-by-play for Campbell University, professor at the damn university too. But he is now a super popular YouTuber who has close to 300,000 subscribers, I believe, on YouTube, which is insane. I was on one of my like regular sort of news, channels the other day that I watch regularly, Breaking Points, and all in the comments is, you should get this channel on. What's going on with shipping? You should have him on because he'll be able to talk about the pier in Gaza that is, that's a hot mess going on over there. The construction of it is a hot mess. Anyways, so that was a little like a sidebar there. But Sal is like the first to put out information, just anything that's going on with like major shipping stories all around the globe. He really has become, like, in just a short amount of time, like the go-to source for a lot of these global events that are happening. Well, one of those events is obviously the Keystone Bridge. And so a big part of that after the controlled demolition is moving the cargo ship back to port where they can finally get those people, get the merchant mariners off of that damn cargo ship, get whatever cargo is salvageable that's still on that ship. And what plays a huge role in that is tugboats. And so I was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to cover tugboats in this show. And I said, well, we also have to cover the other sort of cute boats and unsung heroes or unsung modes in freight. And so the way this is going to kind of work is I'm going to talk about tugboats, and then you're going to talk about barges, and then we're going to kind of marry these two mighty modes of unsung, I guess, freight. I guess I don't know how else to really put this. What was your familiarity with tugboats? Lots of familiarity, or like, oh, you just kind of noticed them, and what is your, I guess, knowledge level of tugboats?
So, interesting you bring that up. I would say from a very low level, I spend a lot of time on Lake Michigan. So we see a lot of barges going across Lake Michigan throughout the day, especially if you're just hanging out by the lake for hours on end. And a lot of times those are being pulled by tugboats in particular. So that's one. Of course, seen dredgers with tugboats too. And then Why do I feel like there's like a child story about tugboats or something? Maybe I'm wrong, but that's like coming to mind. But that's very little information there. I will say though, recently there was a company that I did get a chance to write about who was working on like tugboat visibility and like being able to capture the network of like tugboats
Oh,
available.
interesting.
Yeah. As you go through this, I'll try to find that really quick and see who that was. But um, it's when you say unsung, I think yeah, 100%. It's one of those. It's like kind of reminds me of like pilot cars, right? It's like people don't really think about the importance of their role in like oversized movements as well. But they have a really, really interesting responsibility too. So that's kind of where my, without doing any research, was limited to.
Like base level, because they are really like the title of this segment, like unsung heroes, because they really are called, in my research for this, they're called the backbone of the shipping industry, because shipping experts believe that tugboats to be a vital piece into smooth port operations. I could go through like the history of it, but sort of too long, didn't read or watch. It really got started early 1900s. They were steam powered at first, but now they're trying to, they're mostly diesel powered now. But then they're also trying to move into like the EV world. There are some EVs that are in the tugboat space as well. And the thing to keep in mind with tugboats is that they're extremely powerful. They're essentially like just all power. And they're the ones responsible. And the reason why I bring up the Baltimore Key Bridge incident or the accident that happened is because in order to move that cargo ship from that location, you have to use tugboats. And a big piece of why the accident happened in the first place is because of a lack of tugboats within that port control, that port area. So that's the reason why I had this graphic up from Sal that Sal tweeted out, is that the tugboat is like an essential piece for helping to get that cargo ship and steer it in the right direction to get to the port that it needs in order to take care of that business and take care of, just the getting the cargo off, getting the crew members off. And I'm going to play this video really quick because it's super cool. I have a whole new appreciation for tugboats. So hopefully you guys can see. And I'll play about 1.5 minutes of this video from Interesting Engineering.
Tugboats maneuver vessels through the tightest spaces, such as a narrow canal or crowded harbor. But don't be fooled by their size. They're powerful enough to move vessels up to 1,000 times bigger than them. Here's how. The first thing to note about tugboats is that they are practically all engine. These diminutive boats sport diesel engines of up to 3,400 horsepower. That gives the average harbor boat an insane weight-to-power ratio, a whopping 9.5 compared to the 1.2 of the cargo ships they pull. These engines can power up to 3 propellers acting in tandem, generating massive amounts of thrust for the small boat. This thrust is the force that generates a tugboat's bollard pull, the theoretical maximum amount of force it can exert on a pulled object. While most tugboats are able to exert 110 tons of bollard pull, recent technological developments have allowed the construction of the Island Victory, which sports a bollard pull of 526 tons. But it isn't just their engines that allow them to do what they do so well. Tugboats also need to have extreme maneuverability, which is achieved through a sophisticated system of rudders and nozzles. Their overall design is also a big contributing factor to how much they can pull. Tugboats feature heavy displacement hulls, which allow them to dig into the water, creating more friction, which means a greater bollard pull.
Are you in freight sales with a book of business looking for a new home? Or perhaps you're a freight agent in need of a better partnership? These are the kinds of conversations we're exploring in our podcast interview series called The Freight Agent Trenches, sponsored by SPI Logistics. Now, I can tell you all day that SPI is one of the most successful logistics firms in North America who helps their agents with back office operations such as admin, finance, IT, and sales, but I would much rather you hear it directly from SPI's freight agents themselves. And what better way to do that than by listening to the experienced freight agents tell their stories behind the how and the why they joined SPI. Hit the freight agent link in our show notes to listen to these conversations, or if you're ready to make the jump, visit spi3pl.com.
Yeah, so that is like, sort of like the
Cool.
backstory of tugboats, and how they kind of the backstory, but just the more or less like their power and the jobs that they most likely take over in essentially any port. Like I've heard after this Baltimore Key Bridge accident that there are calls from like John Conrad from G Captain, for example, that thinks that tugboats should be at every single port in the country just to be able to help avoid accidents from happening like that in the future, and just to be able to use them in tandem with making port operations much more efficient. So there was a couple other key facts here. They said that they can operate solo or as a team to help the mega ships move through a port or canal. If you're looking at the screen right now, you can see 2 tugboats in action. And so they work together in order to help tackle some of these bigger cargo ships, which seem to really only get bigger like many cities, like year after year, they're just getting bigger and bigger. They will also push more than they tow, which is why you see them run right up next to a big cargo ship and push it in the direction that it needs to go. A lot of the construction around a tugboat is really made of like rubber. So in the video that we just saw, you see a bunch of tires sort of on the side of the boat, and that's by design, is so that it's not just those pieces of rubber, but the actual hull of the ship can a lot of times be made out of rubber as well. They help put out fires at sea. They help icebreakers through tough Arctic routes. And like what you see in the Dolly situation, which is what the Dolly ship is, the one that was crippled underneath the Baltimore Key Bridge, it helps it to get to safe land. And now there are also I mentioned earlier, there are also some extra efforts to electrify tugboats, which kind of has a similar debate compared to trucking, which I thought was interesting, because there's a lot of like tugboat captains that have their own YouTube channel, and it's very similar to drivers that have their own YouTube channel, and they, thousands and thousands of followers, and they sort of talk about, the day in the life of a tugboat captain.
Awesome.
There was a really great video that Vice released where they sent like this nerdy little writer. They called him the tugboat guys that are working on that actual boat. We're calling them, like, they're making fun of him, calling him like Egon from Ghostbusters, in case you want a visual of how this guy looks. And then he shows up to a place where it's like a marina with like super, tough guys that are working probably 15 hours every day doing hard labor. And then, you got a guy like Egon that shows up and, wants to do a story on a day in the life of a tugboat captain. And so it was really interesting to see the dynamics between the two. That the community is really strong among tugboats, like the crew that works on them, and also within trucking as well. But back to the electrification, because in that video that we just watched, the power is the most important part. And so the theory is kind of, where you have some tugboats that when they need the big power, then they're just going to use those tugboats for diesel operations. But then other ones might work in tandem, where it's maybe not just 2, but it's 3 of them, and one of them is electrified. The trouble is that the EV's got to be able to match the diesel power. It's not quite there yet, but there are some opportunities that you could work in maybe smaller ports or work in tandem, like I just said. There was also another company, which I thought was kind of cool, because we mentioned, with the rubber around a tugboat and how they have to attach a line to the cargo ship. And the tugboat itself is a lot of times made out of rubber, but connecting to the cargo ship, that's where like the most danger happens, the most dangerous activities. But there is a company called Tug that is based out of Europe that is trying to change that, where they use instead of a tugboat going directly up to the big cargo ship in order to catch the line or to get the line from either or, what they're doing is they are taking a drone instead and taking the line from a tugboat and flying it over to the cargo ship. So I'm going to play this video really quick. This video comes from Delft Dynamics, and it's about the Tug system.
Delft.
Tug is a leading towage operator offering its innovative services to ports and terminals on a global scale. In its ambition to achieve safer and more efficient working conditions, Tug invented a way to ensure safety while connecting the tow line. Conventionally, tugboat captains maneuver close to the assisted vessel to be able to grab the messenger line from the assisted vessel's crew, often even under the bow or in the turbulent
Oh my
propeller.
God, so scary.
A minor flaw in the maneuvering can result in major damage or injuries of the deck crew of both the tugboat and the assisted ship. Tug is the first tugboat company that uses drone technology with object recognition software to deliver a messenger line to a predetermined location. Thus, instead of picking up the messenger line of the assisted ship, the line will be brought to the ship. This allows them to sail beside the assisted ship instead of in front or straight after her.
Yeah.
With this technology, a safer way of connecting towing lines is achieved. Not only to sea vessels, but also when assisting rig moves, platforms and dragging pontoons. This innovation is again a step forward in the continuous pursuit of safer tug operations.
Well, talk about like a no-brainer that you're surprised it wasn't fixed yet.
Right. And
It's so scary. Like the boat's like basically getting sucked into the other boat, and they're like, aim. Well, it's like because if you ever watch it like Below Deck, right? Like they have to do that when they come in. They have to like throw, and if they're off, like Captain Lee's like not gonna be happy about it because they're basically screwed. They have to like back up all the way. We can't do that with that big of a boat. Like,
well, it's also a lot of danger that happens with that Vice video that I mentioned. The deckhand, who was also the writer, was getting yelled at like constantly because of the way that he was holding the rope. And the guy was like, if I see you do this again, he's like, I'm going to slap your hand and I'm going to do it every single time because I would rather slap your hand and make that muscle memory than for you to lose your fingers because it can happen just so quickly with a lot of these, just being on a boat in general. Like there's a lot of issues that can happen. But when you're on a boat all day, every day, like you are increasing those chances of some kind of an issue happening. So there's one more thing that I did want to share because I don't know that I've talked about it on here before, but I did start a merch store for Everything is Logistics podcast.
Oh,
and
yes.
I made this cutest little mug that I already ordered for myself. So it's called a Tugboat Respecter. It's a cute little tugboat right on the front of it.
So American too.
I was like, hopefully, people would like it as much as I did because I already ordered one for myself. So if you're looking for something like that, I'll put a link to it in the comments just in case you're now a tugboat respecter as well. So that is sort of my tugboat fandom in a nutshell. So Grace, I think now it's time for you to talk about barges.
Well, right before we get into that, because I did find it, I just sent you a YouTube video. If you want to pop that open really quick, there was I knew when did I write about this? February. Okay, cool. So not too long ago. And this was actually, a lot of times people come to me with stories, but like once a week I try to find a story that no one's like writing about that I think is really cool. And this one captured me. This was like, again, in February, they raised $3.1 million. And their job is just to bring more visibility and create a marketplace for tugs. And it looks like they just came out with a barge one too. So what a great transition. If you want to play like just probably the first minute of the video should be a good idea of exactly kind of what he's doing too.
Oh, and they're at a plug and play event. So shout out to plug and play.
Yeah, shout out to plug and play.
A lot of airtime on this show.
Yeah, exactly.
CEO and co-founder of Open Tug, and we're improving the efficiency of freight transportation by improving access to inland and coastal waterways. So if you look at freight as a whole and logistics as a whole, most modes have been making transportation easier. A lot of digitalization in trucking, international container freight, rail, and even air cargo as well. But looking at waterways as a whole, domestic waterways, bulk and break bulk transportation, it's still fairly difficult to access. Most of the sales processes are very manual. You got to talk to a lot of people. Depending on what you're doing, you may be coordinating across 3, 4, 5, 6 different parties, each of which you have to communicate individually depending on your use case. And that creates a really high barrier of entry for shippers. And if you know the industry, great, but if not, there's a lot of complication there, and it's difficult to access, which constrains the efficiency of the industry as a whole. So we simplified that. We're the first digital marketplace to connect bulk and break bulk shippers with transportation and terminal capacity. Customers simply search for their requirements, their destinations, their cargo, and their timeline. They book that shipment and they track it to their destination. But that's not something that's normally accessible with the technology stack of existing domestic and inland coastal maritime organizations. So we streamline sales for these operators by providing them a modern SaaS platform for their sales and customer management. So this includes automated voyage planning,
SaaS, take my money,
customer portal, instant proposal generation, as well as automated tracking and position reporting.
SaaS, they said we want
experience to their customers, whether that's coming through us, through our marketplace, or their existing customers and their existing channels as well. So our marketplace launched in Q1 of 2023. We saw over 3 million tons of cargo requested through it through the year. And we have hundreds of service providers that list their services, provide quotes, and interact with our customers. And I think these are all Q3 numbers, so it's grown since that. And then our SaaS tools power some of the largest companies in the industry.
Jacksport, shout out.
McDonough Marine Service, CLG, formerly Float Freight, and many others, Port of Pittsburgh, Port of Jacksonville, as you see here. And we're growing that every single day.
Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips freight brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history converge on a single screen. It's not just a page, it's a strategic command center designed to help brokers win. TIE equips your team with all of the data they need to negotiate with confidence and allows them to communicate directly with carriers and customers from a simple control base. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, go to tai-software.com/battlestations, and we also have a link for you in the show notes to sign up for a demo.
Super cool.
Yeah, right? Like, I love...
free for shippers. I just pulled up their website. OpenTug is free for shippers.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so if you click on their website, like it literally just like pulls up. Hopefully, you can see it. I kind of want to, we're just going to do a live demo.
Yeah, let's on the spot, OpenTug. No, I love this. No, it is interesting too, because it's like, all this data is available. One of my favorite sites to use when I am on the lakes is this site called boatnerd.com, and it's just all AIS data. So it's not hard to, brought to you by Marine Traffic, brought to you by P44, I guess. So, it all trickles down somewhere, doesn't it, Jet? But it's, I think it's cool. I mean, it's a different type of marketplace that, if anything, I think is probably even more difficult to find connections for, right? Especially if you're going into, he's 100% right. You probably, if you're a ship liner and you're going into a certain type of waterway system, there's probably someone you've always used. And whenever we talk about someone you've always used, that means price-wise, you're probably paying a premium price. And he's right. The barrier of entry would be difficult to get in there if you did want to open up your own tug situation. Or own a barge line or something like that. So I just think it's interesting. It's again, like, this is a huge, people don't talk about this type of mode when you talk about bringing goods into the United States. Wow.
If you're listening, we are currently going through OpenTug's website and just clicking around.
I love photos of boats. Like, that's my favorite too. It's like, yeah, look, do you need a hopper? Which we're talking about barges, perfect transition. That's going to be for all of your grains and all of your hopper bulk related needs.
It's just so cool that you can see all of this visualized. I didn't know that all because from what I understand, and especially, doing like the tug research, is like it really is like who you know. Like
It is, yeah.
it's completely relationship driven. I would be curious to know like how many like it doesn't sound like there's like a load board for barges.
No.
Like you just got to know somebody in order to get your stuff shipped, especially on the inland waterways. Which, if you're looking at the map, you know the Mississippi River that flows through Louisiana and then has all of these different waterways that go throughout the central part of the United States. It's arguably inland waterways are arguably one of the biggest geographic advantages of the United States. Just watched a video on that the other day about
Love that. I love that quote. Put that on a shirt.
well, France owned like the middle part of America. And when I was looking at this map, at one point, obviously France owned, the middle part of America before the Louisiana Purchase, but it looked like France only owned that part because of the inland waterways from the Mississippi River that dumps out into the Gulf up throughout, the central and sort of towards the western like Montana, North Dakota areas. But yeah, they owned all of that land. And then when Britain and France went to war, Napoleon couldn't fight a war in the United States in order to keep the Louisiana Purchase. And so that's why he needed the money to fight the war against Britain. And so that's why they sold the Louisiana Purchase to the United States. And the rest is kind of history. So it's
not a good
cool.
history at all times, but definitely a history there.
Well, let's get into the barge talk. Let's talk about barges.
Yeah, actually, don't leave this page. Can you go back to that? Because I think that actually will help a little bit. So, especially visualize a little bit more of the good old barges themselves. So, in that first photo, and clearly, if you've probably seen these again in inland waterways. If you're surrounded by Great Lakes like myself, you've seen a number of these. They're a lot of what you usually see pulled around. Clearly, you're not always moving container ships inland, and honestly, I don't think a lot of our inland waterways could take those ships to begin with. So barges in particular, here's some fun facts for you. So first thing, they're mostly flat, and they're the opposite of tugboats. They don't have a motor or an engine. They're just kind of there floating, and if anything, they need some type of towboat or tugboat attached to it to get them moving from there. And I think that's why they're absolutely flat, which helps them navigate a lot of these waterways so they don't get stuck or they don't get hit anything as they're going through. They're used a lot of what you usually see moving around is the hopper style or the bulk types right there that we talked about earlier. I saw a couple of those this weekend myself. But there are a number of different types of barges, and they can measure is up to largest vessels measure up to about 200 feet long, can hold over 3,000 tons of cargo as well. And the ones that you see in the seaports, the ones that are ocean barges, definitely hold more than that. Majority, though, are inland barges. And again, they're for more of those small bodies of water, cost effective, can move a lot in a little space. And a lot of them are used actually for oversized loads as well. So if you're moving turbines or things of that nature, you'll see a lot there. Basically, if this thing can't fit on a truck or a rail car, then they're probably on a barge. There's also the deck barges, which is usually more like construction equipment, natural rock, stone, large pieces of metal. A lot of times they even move livestock on those too. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I see an inland one on there, but those ones are going to be usually just like the flat. Perfect. There we go. That one in particular is called a deck barge. Yep, just again, flat for equipment. A lot of times too, you'll see deck barges used apparently as like dry land for waterway workage. So it's interesting actually. They're finishing up the new Gordie Howe Bridge here in Detroit. So we'll have 2 bridges now in Detroit crossing over to Canada. And there's a deck bridge there that they use as kind of like a surface in the middle of the Detroit River to help build that. There's also the hopper barges. We went over those. Those are the ones that move more of like grain and bulk loads. There's shale barges, and so those are used for more of the oil and gas industry. They look kind of like the deck barges, but they're usually just like a little bit taller is kind of the way to explain it. Those are apparently highly regulated though by the U.S. Coast Guard too. So a lot of times they'll help pull those. There are then liquid mud barges. And those have pipes and pumps on board to help circulate and dispose of fluid. Typically used more in like inland oil drilling sites. So the ones that you're likely seeing if you're on a lake or you're sitting near a large river or waterway are the inland barges, deck barges, and hopper barges. And if you're at more of like a construction site that's on the water, you're probably seeing a crane barge as well. But yeah, these again, I see these all the time. And I usually, it's funny, if you want to bring up the site really quick, like I said, I use a site here for Michigan boats called boatnerd.com. I should bring it to Craig, see if we can like put it underneath the fire crown.
Wow.
But it's a guy who basically just tracks yes, love this site. He basically tracks boats and like we'll talk about certain like boat history and barge news.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, right? It's so fun. Like I just love that there's a person out there that's dedicated themselves to this.
What a great domain name too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then if you look, I think, is there, see on the right side, it says AIS, quick links. So this is what I use if, so my mom and I will spend a lot of time on the beach during the summer and it will, if we see like a boat, we always want to know like what it is, where it's going, stuff like that. So if you click did you already click the AIS? Is it just taking a while? Yeah, I'll take a second.
Oh, wait. It shared an, sorry, it opened a new tab.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of them, right? Zoom in, go over to, if we zoom in a little bit more, go to the top left, okay, so that's why I live there. Go scroll it to the left, closer to Lake Michigan. It's funny. Nope, that's Huron. That's other side of the hand. There you go.
Okay. Woo. It's nothing like live navigating.
Right? So like this is usually the boats that I'm looking at too. And if you like click them, they'll usually show like see the one that says like Great Republic or something. Right there where your
right there, okay.
Yeah. Click the actual boat. It's like a red icon. Yeah, see, so it'll pull up exactly what it looks like.
A little photo. And
yeah.
So if you're just listening, we are on ais.boatnerd.com. And this is all live information, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes it's like off by like an hour or so, but yeah, usually like if we see a boat in front of us, so quickly we'll get on there and it'll show us and then we click it and see what's up with it.
That's awesome.
It usually tell you on the bottom too, like where it's going or where it came from. That's always cool.
So cool that there's just like hobbyists out here that is just pulling together this kind of information.
I know, right?
In order to look at this.
And then this will actually capture like any type of boat too. So a lot of times during the summertime, we'll have like big yachts coming through the lakes and it'll tell you like what its name is and all that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's so I briefly did, and I say briefly, but I need to do a more in-depth episode on like Great Lakes shipping. I had a Rust Belt kid on from Gator Bar. And so he does like, he's a shipper. So he does a lot of like Great Lakes shipping. And he was talking about some of the boats that come in and, you know, different shipping scenarios and things like that. But this is just on another level of all of the, I guess, just available shipping options, that it's not just the inland waterways, but it's Great Lakes shipping as well. I would maybe argue that are these, so we have obviously like port operations, but then we have Great Lakes shipping, and then we have the the inland waterways. I think that's probably like the big three of the United States.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, like, especially you zoomed out here, like, look at all that stuff is moving right now, right? So
Yeah.
it's like when I say like I'm used to seeing barges, like I'd say probably 80% of what you're seeing right now. I'm pretty sure the red ones are barges, blue ones are tow or tugboats. Um, and then I think there's like another color. Blue, I think also sometimes is like yachts and stuff like that. So
That's awesome. So,
yeah.
and if you're just listening, again, we're looking at a screen of like almost like Google Maps, but it's all of the Great Lakes in sort of one screenshot, and then I mean, dozens and dozens of barges, of ships, of probably tugboats too that are in there, of just all just operating. This is all just going on around you, like right now, which I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate how much stuff gets just moved all the time and how efficient this kind of shipping is, because I had pulled up one note that I did want to share. It actually came from Rachel Premack, formerly Freight Waves. I believe now she's working for a hedge fund, but really, really talented writer. And she said, just with 1 gallon of fuel, the resourceful barge can chug along for 616 tonnage miles compared
Wow.
to 478 tonnage miles for rail and 150 miles for
Wow.
trucks. So 1 gallon of fuel will get you like 4 times as much as a truck, which is insane. That's crazy. So we're unsung heroes for sure in the world of shipping.
You you know you should we could do an episode on one day too. Is that up in the Upper Peninsula? If you see, there's a ton of boats by it. It's it's kind of like in the center right now of the screen, right on the border of Canada. And if you scroll inwards, and Michiganders already know this, but a lot of out of staters don't know. Right, like kind of exactly like where your cursor was. Yep. So keep going. See where all those boats are right here in the middle of the screen. Nope, to the right, right where like Canada meets perfect. Yeah, keep scrolling right there. So though that is the Soo locks. So like we have locks in Michigan, just like the Panama Canal, and basically the boats will come in through there. The water will raise up, then they can go and they travel through it, and then the same thing once they get to the other end, it goes down and they keep traveling through the Lake Superior too. So I visited there. It's really cool.
So it almost looks like they're suffering from port congestion as well, which is somewhat recent news that a lot of ports around the globe are suffering from port congestion, especially everything that's going on in the Suez Canal and Panama Canal, and so all these ships are being diverted. So it looks like they got some congestion going on too, which is kind of crazy.
Well, and if I remember correctly, there's only one in and one out. It's only where I think Panama's got like 2 lanes, right? Or somewhere between 2 and 4 lanes. This I'm pretty sure is just 1 lane each. So it's like one boat at a time. I'm pretty sure that is coming through, but maybe we should do an episode on that.
We should do Great Lake shipping in canals, and then I also think something on icebreakers. So hopefully, if you're listening, be on the lookout for those episodes in the future, and to the haters that steal our content ideas and try to do them first, we'll know.
Well, on that note, if you want to go into this too, we can talk about lesser transportation. And one of my favorite boats is actually built to break ice too. What we're going to do now is I literally want to tell everyone this is my favorite boat of all time.
I think I just brought it up. The SS Badger?
Yes, SS Badger. Okay. Yes. The SS Badger, my absolute favorite boat of all time. It has an identical twin called the SS Spartan that hangs out in Ludington. This is where I spend. That's probably me waving from that from that lighthouse there. Yeah. So I spend at least probably 2 to 3 weeks every summer out on the holidays in a city called Ludington, Michigan, and it's connected to one of our still used US 10 waterway highways, and it runs the SS Badger. So this starting Memorial Day until I want to say it's actually extended, so sometime in November. The Badger will run back and forth from Michigan to Wisconsin. And a lot of people use it. So let's start back in its history. It originated in 1952 as a rail car ferry. So it actually was, they put rail cars off of the trains into the boat to get it over there a little bit faster. And over time, it actually became more of a commercial and car ferry. So instead of having to drive through Chicago to get to Wisconsin, you can jump on this thing for 4 hours and get over to the other side very, very quickly. And it's actually now one of the there's 14 vessels that were running back and forth back in the day, but now this is the only one left. Like I said, it does have a twin. It's the Spartan. If we had Boat Nerd open, you'd see the Spartan sitting there. It again looks exactly the same. The Spartan only sits there though as a parts server for the the SS Badger. So basically, seeing that it's its twin, if a part breaks down in the Badger, they just go take it off of the Spartan and they put it on this thing. And so it's kind of cool. The Spartan's always sitting in Ludington all day long. It never moves. It actually is now a National Historic Landmark as of 2016. It's the only National Historic Landmark that does physically move, and it is a state landmark for 2 states, not only Michigan but for Wisconsin as well, and it goes into Manitowoc, Wisconsin. I've been on it. So here's the thing: I've been on it for a tour, but I've never actually taken a trip on it. So that's something I want to do at some point. My parents have done, they do a really cool 4th of July dinner where on the 4th of July, after it comes back, so it leaves at 9 a.m. in Michigan, comes back to Michigan by 7 p.m. From Wisconsin. And so afterwards, it'll take the boat will go out into the ocean or into the lake a little bit, and then you can watch the fireworks from the boat, which is kind of cool. It kind of looks like the Titanic. Yeah, it's pretty sick. And it's cool because you don't honks every time it comes into shore. So it's like,
well, what happens during this might be a dumb question, but
no.
Like during winter time, like can these ships still operate? Like are there like levels of ice over it? Or layers of ice?
They used to operate during the winter time because they are built to break ice. That's kind of an interesting thing about them is they're redesigned, I think, in the like early 60s or something to break ice. But I just don't think they run it anymore because I don't think it's just needed. Like there's not enough volume of users. It's easy for them to fill it out, I think, during the summertime, but a little bit harder during the winter time for them. So I think they do shut down for that reason. This is when I say it's my favorite boat, I know all of you out there who are like, Grace, you're a Sierra Club member, you still give money Clean Water Action. This is still a coal burning boat. It's one of the only ones still left on Lake Michigan, I think, if not the only one.
Oh wow.
A couple of years ago it did get a new I don't want to say engine because I don't think it was exactly the engine, but it did basically, it used to burn coal and then dump the coal into the water. Yikes. Yeah. Not great. Right. Now it doesn't do that. It still burns. It still burns a little bit of coal. It's not fully coal operated, but still does burn coal. And instead now they dump the ash. They offload the ash at the end and actually goes into making cement. So
that's super smart.
Yeah, they have found a way, but a lot of people were against I have some friends from my college years who were very no. I spent a lot of time fighting coal ash. I'll just say that. I did. I fought a lot of coal ash in my college years, so a lot of people were very mad at me for loving this boat so much. But it's so big and so beautiful. It looks like the Titanic, and it's awesome because it moves a number of trucks a day. Most commercial trucks that are hauling in it are actually hauling turbines, but they are. So I think in that first YouTube clip I sent over, that's them loading up, I believe, trucks to go into there. And a lot of it, because in Traverse City we have a big wind turbine producer. Instead of paying the oversized fees to go like through Chicago and Illinois, instead you just like put it on this boat and you have to worry about any of it. And it gets there in 4 hours. I mean, can you imagine driving oversized load turbines through like 4 states? Whoosh. Yeah, Chicago traffic, yeesh.
Yeah,
Not
take the
doing it.
barge and a nice little waterways trip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then get a nice view. The driver gets
Yeah,
to,
it feels nice.
yeah, it saves some hours, right? Because you turn the truck off, you have to worry about it. It's true. Did you find that clip?
I wonder, does that count towards your driving time if you're a truck driver? You're sitting on the barge?
I'm gonna without the education say no, because you turn your truck off.
Yeah, true.
I mean, there's some movie theaters in there. There's cafeterias. I'm pretty certain there's like beds that you can sleep in if you want to. So it's like, it's a good time. You're not just sitting there waiting 4 hours. There's actually things to do. Apparently, there's like a big bingo situation. You know me, I love bingo. So I just need to get on this boat. And one of my best friends from college actually lives on the other side of it too. So we always joke like, I just sent the boat to go pick you up. But yeah, if you want to show, there is if you see it where I put in my notes, moves thousands of commercial loads a year. That should be, I just highlighted it for you. That should be
okay.
And then they also move something cool, but we'll show this one first. I will say too, they also in recent years got a new social media person. So they're like on TikTok now. Yeah, exactly. They're on YouTube. And I'm like very proud of them.
So look, now you're gonna have to get a TikTok so you can see all of these things before they make it over to Instagram.
See if TikTok survives. Let's see. The day I make a TikTok is the day they take TikTok down. Like,
they better not. God, I hope they don't. It's easily the best social media app, as we're about to play a YouTube Shorts that is watermarked from TikTok.
Yeah.
It's this video, if you're just listening, it's loading and unloading large tractor equipment using a semi, and it's going on to the SS Badger. So that I think that's what Grace was talking about when referring to some of these large items that can be shipped using a boat like this. So definitely like another unsung hero, which is
there's another short underneath that, and this is what they're like famously known for moving these.
Oh, wait, one more.
Yeah, right underneath.
Not that one.
No, on my notes. If you see it.
Let's see. Okay, so now
they're famously known for moving Clydesdales. So yeah. They do this, I think, every single year, and they've been known for it for a while. It's just a faster trip for them. If you don't know what Clydesdales
easier
are.
Probably on the horses too.
Oh yeah.
The world-renowned Budweiser Clydesdales were in Ludington to take part of the sesquicentennial celebrations. After a week of appearances and events, the Clydesdales departed Michigan on their way to South Dakota via the Badger, the second time they have ever sailed with us. They are one of 3 teams consisting of 10 horses that travel the country. For a majority of the year, they attend special events all over the country with their operations team.
I think they can fit 5 trucks in there.
Their appearances this week were sponsored by Ludington Beverage. It's an honor to safely carry America.
Jesus.
I love that.
That was such a good, if you're wondering what that sound was, that is YouTube Shorts deciding to automatically play the next video in the feed as soon as we watch some cute little horses
get
transported onto a boat.
I love Shorts. But yeah, so that's my favorite boat. It's my mom and I, we always love to go sit and watch the sunset and watch this boat come in, and it's loud. It's just, I love boats because, especially on like big bodies of water, they're just like, they're there and then they're not there, they just like come out of nowhere, and they're just, you always see this thing from very far away. It's like a little dot, and then it just like slowly gets massive, and it's just the coolest boat, and the know the history of it and how long it's been here, and also just how important it is. I mean, it is very, very important. There was a year that it was actually shut down because, if I remember correctly, it hit a rock or something like out in the bay somewhere, and so there was a year that it didn't run at all, and they were like going through new ownership or something. And just think of everyone that moved oversized loads that year. I mean, if you look at Michigan, you don't want to take an oversized load north. Oh, hell no. You don't want to do that. That would be miserable trying to go through the Porcupine Mountains that way. No, I would never do that. And then you definitely don't want to.
The Porcupine Mountains? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Never heard of them.
They're so like they're like over here. And so you definitely don't want to do that. And then you have Chicago, which is like, who would want to take an oversized load through there? So talk about like an interesting way that we move oversized loads through the United States, especially, I mean, even like if you're shipping even from somewhere like anywhere on the East Coast, you're likely probably coming in through Michigan and taking that route instead of having to go through multiple cities. If you can get through Michigan and up into there, that's easy way out.
Huh.
So,
wow,
yeah.
Michigan kind of a unknown shipping powerhouse as far as that's, especially when you think about all of the states in the United States. Like, who is, you tend to think of like more like port cities, traditional port cities, but Michigan is also a port city as well, correct? Because of all of the waterways and.
Yeah, I think that's why we have we have so many different cultures, especially around Detroit. I mean, the fur trading was huge in this area. I think about the way that we expanded out west. I mean, Michigan was, I think, just so important it was an economic importance to just how our country grew. And really, until you get to the Mississippi River, I mean, there were no other huge bodies of water like that you could take advantage of and moving things as well. So if we should do a Michigan episode soon, and I bet you that could get really interesting if we actually put some research into that as well.
Yeah, well, I wrote that down for a future episode idea, because I liked doing like this, that hopefully other folks enjoyed it as well, but like this kind of segment that's a little bit away from like news and more of like, what's some other parts of shipping that are just cool that I don't really understand all that well. And so using this using this show with you as a vehicle for, to research, pun intended, for a lot of these things that I want to learn more about. So this was cool. So we'll definitely do that. We'll do canals in the future too. And I really want to do one on icebreakers. So maybe that'll be our sort of show plan here for the next.
That would actually, especially with Lake Superior, that could get really interesting too.
Heck yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit, because if you were listening to the previous episode, we talked about tugboats and barges, and we also talked about what we would be discussing on future episodes. And so I think we talked about icebreakers that we're going to do in future episodes. I'm not sure what, maybe the other ones I'm blanking on what we had mentioned, but one of those topics was also shipping canals.
Yes.
And so we thought that we would shine a little bit of a light on the different and major shipping canals all over the world. And I think for most folks, you are used to like the Suez Canal. That's the one that Egypt owns. That is it's been, I'll just go through my notes right now. It was opened in 1869. It's a critical maritime route, or has been a critical maritime route for over 150 years. And the significance of it is that it reduces the maritime journey between Europe and Asia by about 4,300 miles. I was going to mention kilometers, but I don't know what a kilometer is. And, it's, day before July 4th. So we are going to go with miles.
Yeah, for sure.
What the fuck is a kilometer?
Yeah, what is a kilometer, the world?
But nearly 10% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal, including 12% of the world's total oil shipments. I could also go through the Panama Canal, but I wanted to show this quick video first. So let me bring up Grace's favorite platform. And that's the Suez Canal. Hopefully you didn't. hear that volume, but let me go ahead and hit play on this one. Oh, I got to add it to the stage first. So some BTS for you guys. Here's an overview of the Suez Canal from this TikTok user, Novasphere2.
Here is the Suez Canal, one of the busiest shipping channels in the world, and also one of the most profitable canals. The Suez Canal was initially excavated by the French, but the British later became the major shareholders. After Egypt gained independence, they consistently sought control of the canal and eventually succeeded in ousting the British. As one of the busiest shipping channels globally, the Suez Canal witnesses tens of thousands of vessels passing through every year. It brings significant economic benefits to Egypt, serving as a vital financial pillar for the country. Reports estimate that around 23,000 ships transit the canal annually, generating approximately $8 billion in toll revenue. This means an average daily income of around $22 million and an average toll fee of $350,000 per ship passing through the canal. Today, 70% of oil tankers and cargo ships worldwide navigate through the Suez Canal. It has become a crucial trade route between Asia and Europe, given the substantial costs involved in detouring around the southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. Egypt seems to be making money hand over fist, lying back and enjoying the benefits.
Which is actually, when you think about any fun facts that you got about the Suez Canal?
Not about the Suez, but apparently, like, we've had canals. We've been using canals. One thing I saw was since Mesopotamia times, which, if you're a history buff, that's we're talking thousands of years BC, before the guy that a lot of people believe in, so it's to make BC politically correct, but no, it's that's crazy. I didn't realize how much money they're making off of that too.
And the toll fees, I think, is what's I'm like, wow, what a great opportunity for just, I don't know, just existing.
I wish I'd like to see that
canal.
I'd like to see that like P&L though, because I'm assuming the upkeep of a canal isn't the cheapest thing either. So like, again, people who might not understand businesses, like, just don't think that they're bringing $22 million and that's their profit. I just assume there's got to be some cost, or else, like, I mean, Egypt is but they've also had some instability issues. So, but that's great. And so I was going to say the lock aspect of it. So I was going to say you kind of have canals, and then there's some, right, that do have the lock aspect, which we see here a lot in Michigan. We have the Sioux locks, the Sioux Canal, and the Sioux locks up in the UP. Whereas then there's also like the Erie Canal, which is more closer to Toledo, Detroit area, but that doesn't have locks either. But interesting. No, I didn't.
Yeah, I had it on my. So I'll play that video next on the. Well, maybe I could play it now with the Erie Canal, because in my notes it says it opened in 1825, so it was one of the first shipping canals in the United States. I think it was the first, but it played a pivotal role in economic development of the United States in the 19th century. It reduced transportation costs by about 95%, significantly boosting trade and settlement in the Midwest. And it spans 363 miles, connecting the Hudson River in Albany to Lake Erie in Buffalo. So I don't think
some lock at some point then with the.
Well, here, I'll bring this video up now since we're talking about it, and then we'll get into the Panama Canal next, which is probably, I think, for United States residents, probably the most famous one. So Suez and Panama. So I'll play this video now too, and this one is on the Erie Canal, and this comes from Legends and Lores over on TikTok. Oh wait, I gotta actually share the screen.
Beautiful.
Flawless production level here. Can you tell we're ready for vacation?
America's greatest engineering feats was completed in 1825. The Erie Canal, stretching 363 miles from Albany to Buffalo, was a groundbreaking project that transformed the nation. Before the canal, transporting goods from the interior to the port cities was costly and time-consuming. The canal drastically reduced transportation costs and time, fueling economic growth and westward expansion. Its construction was an immense challenge, requiring innovative solutions such as the use of hydraulic cement. The success of the Erie Canal led to the boom of cities like Syracuse and Rochester, turning New York City into the nation's principal port. It also spurred a canal-building frenzy, with numerous other canals constructed across the country. The Erie Canal wasn't just a marvel of engineering, it was a symbol of American ingenuity and ambition, reshaping the landscape and economy in profound ways. Today, it remains a testament to the transformative power of infrastructure.
So that's the Erie Canal.
AI made TikTok videos so much better, huh?
I know, it's about time you get on it.
All those AI images, I'm like, wow. Well,
it does make my sort of the wheels turn in my brain. Like, oh, maybe I don't have to go and do hair and makeup every time I go on screen, and I could just write these scripts myself, and not have to be a faceless.
The next
channel
episode
instead.
is like just straight AI us. It's like not even, we don't even do it.
Oh God, that'll be the dream. To be honest.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's so crazy too to think like the time period that a lot of this stuff was built and how long it's stayed.
I think, with all of our space discussions too, it's interesting to see how this exact sort of infrastructure, not exact, but this same exact, not exact again, is being built in space now. So we're developing these different like trade lanes and trade routes to space, very similar to how they were developed in the US and just, across like human history. So here is the next video on how the Panama Canal works. Well, first, let me give you a little bit of an overview with the Panama Canal. I'm sure maybe the video I'm going to show is how the Panama Canal actually works, because it's different from other canals across the globe. But the Panama Canal opened up in 1914. It contributes nearly $2 billion annually to Panama's economy, and it shortens the route for shipping, saving around 8,000 nautical miles for ships traveling between the east and the west coast of the Americas. And so obviously the Panama Canal is vitally important to shipping goods into the U.S., so much so that because the U.S. kind of controls the majority of the Panama Canal, or probably all of it, China was at one point in talks with Nicaragua in order to build a new canal. That those talks have stalled, but they were going to build a new canal in Nicaragua that China was going to, control most of it and fund most of it. So that did not happen. So the Panama Canal is still the number one, probably, greatest importance for the U.S. So let me play this video on how the canal actually works. And I'm sorry if you're just listening, but hopefully it still kind of comes through okay. But if not, you can go check out this video over on YouTube. And this video comes from energy.sector8 over on TikTok.
Really goes. Wow.
So if you were just listening, basically what that video is showing is that the ship, once the cargo ship comes up into the canal, I think it's the lock system. Is that where you very similar to the lock system of what you were just talking about? Yep. So it goes almost like into a giant pool. They fill up the pool with the water, and then they shift them over to the next sort of lock step. So they go through like 3 processes of this to get into the canal. Then they go through the canal, and then they go back through almost the same sort of section where they put the ship in a certain section. These walls go up, water is filled up or dropped down, and you move section by section. So people might have heard of like the drought problems that the Panama Canal had suffered earlier this year. And so when they don't have that water, they can't have that, that different fluctuations of pumping water in, draining the water out, and doing that series of processes for each ship that goes through. I think that's one of the bigger complaints with the Panama Canal and really, I think the Suez Canal is only one ship can really go through at a time. You can't have multiple ships, going north and south or east and west at the same time. So that's the only sort of, downfall or I guess, con of the Panama Canal is that you can't have two ships going at once, very similar to the Suez Canal. But any fun facts about the Panama Canal you got?
Well, the one thing I'm thinking about too is I'm pretty sure now that they've expanded it as well because of what they call like a Panamax ship. So it's like cargo ships that are now so wide. And I believe Rachel Premack wrote about it a while ago, right? I think it was during her big ships. Yes. That they actually had to expand in order to make those work. So that's I think an interesting point there. The other thing I was considering too is I'm glad you brought up the drought. I think especially that visual kind of shows you like how important that water is to that system, right? So if there is a fall, you can imagine how much slower it's going to take to get those through. Now, a fun fact, for a while, up until I want to say last year, Disney a Disney cruise ship paid the highest toll to date. This was in 2008 to go through the Panama Canal, and that was $330,000.
Wow.
Now, if you are a Freightways fan, then you probably remember, though, in November of last year, because the line was so long, people were paying higher tolls to jump the line. It was a Japanese container ship, if I remember right, had paid $9 million to jump the line as well. So a little bit more. And I can't imagine that price. If I remember correctly, though, with that Japanese ship, it had some type of product that had an expiration date. So it was one of those things where it's like, if we don't get through this line, like everything on this boat or majority of what's on this boat will expire. So it wasn't just like we had the money, let's pay it and just send the tax over. Another fun fact, and I thought this was interesting as someone who loves the water. In 1928, a man named Richard Halliburton, he's like an inventor or something.
Halliburton?
Yeah. No, I don't think related to that Halliburton.
Okay.
Swam the full length of the Panama Canal.
Oh, wow.
Now, any vessel that goes... Yeah. I guess you can. Now, any boat that goes through it, you have to pay a toll, and it's based on your weight. Well, Halliburton had to do the same thing, and so his toll, and again, 1928, so it's probably a little higher now. He ended up having to pay 36 cents to go through it. So if you are going to swim the Panama Canal, make sure.
Did he have to go through the different, locking
I would assume so. Yeah, which is
that must be
scary. Cool. Like to think about that, like you're just like rising with the tide. I mean, they go like, at least the ones I've been through, they go very slow. So it's not like you're just like all of a sudden up. It's like very
like a gradual process.
Yeah, and that was a small one, so I would assume even bigger it feels even slower. So that's I like the Panama. There's a lot of interesting history. I mean, it's not the most it's definitely not the safest history if you look back at it, but Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, started it, and very interesting president in terms of infrastructure and
national parks.
Yeah, 100%. So, and then to see the back and forth aspect. So, yeah, if you ever get a chance, like, just look up the history of like ownership of it, because
I think too there was one like interesting fact about. I mean, obviously, this is like a terrible part of history, but there were a lot of workers, slavery going on with building the Panama Canal. But for a lot, I think of the white workers, they were falling sick to malaria. And for whatever reason, the slaves that they had brought over from Africa were surviving it.
Wow.
And so I want to say that's like a lot of like the locals in the area were falling sick to malaria, but meanwhile they found a cure, or not a cure, but a way to fix malaria and where it was coming from, because of the slaves that came over and were also, constructing, obviously not willingly, the Panama Canal, and they weren't dying. And so it was the locals that were dying from it, if I remember that story correctly, which is, I don't know if it's like a good thing or a bad thing, but it was a thing that happened. Okay, so another one that I wanted to talk about is, So we've talked about like the famous canals. But then I also wanted to know, like, well, what other, I would have thought that like a lot of canals have already kind of been constructed, that like, we don't really like, is construction really happening on new canals? It turns out they are. So I found a couple videos of like the new canal constructions that are going on across the globe. Because if you think about from the, like, none of that is happening in the United States because we have, the inland waterways. And we talked about it briefly on the last episode of just the power of the inland waterways. Starts at the Mississippi River and it goes up north. And then you have all of these different outposts that go into, sort of the Midwest, but then also into reaching into some of the West Coast. That comes all off the Mississippi River. And so when you can go through the Panama Canal and you can ship your freight over to the New Orleans port, then you can put it on a barge and put it up a barge and send it up the Mississippi River. Like that is an extreme competitive advantage. And also from not just from a military perspective, but also just from, just supplies in general. And that's really how the dominance of the United States is, that we have oceans on each side of us, but then we also have the Mississippi that allows for that transportation process to take place. Well, China is actually building that same thing, because if you look at a map of China, especially population maps, the overwhelming majority of the population, I want to say like 80% of the population, all lives on the eastern coast of China. So they have rural areas that are, obviously in the, central and western parts of China, but most of the population all lives on the east coast. So now they're trying to change that by building a new canal that will hopefully alleviate some of that shipping stress, and almost make like a little bit of like a model of like our inland waterways, just doing it for the Chinese population and also, countries like Vietnam. So I'm going to play this video from Futurology Shorts that's going to talk about that new canal that's being built.
China has begun construction on a $10.5 billion canal called the Pinglu Canal. Located in southern China, it will stretch 135 kilometers, linking the Xi River with ports in the Beidou Gulf, providing a faster route for inland goods to reach the sea. This will provide major economic benefits, while also opening up a new waterway for trade with Asian countries. The project, which is China's first new canal in over 70 years, is planned to finish in 2027. Do you think the Pinglu Canal is a good idea? Let us know in the comments.
So that's the Pinglu Canal that is going on, or the construction that is going on. Like the video said, it's opening up in 2027. Another country that is building a new canal or planning to build a new canal is Turkey. And so over in Turkey, they're kind of trying to do the same thing, where they already have a canal that is within the country, but I think they have a lot of, similar problems where it's, you can't fit two ships, and, there's a lot of like, obviously any kind of canal, especially like Egypt knows this with the Suez Canal. There's also geopolitical tensions, who controls, the canals, who gets to collect the tolls. So there's that aspect of things too. So let me play this video from the same company, Futurology.Shorts, where it talks about the construction of the new canal in Turkey.
Turkey is planning to build a 45-kilometer-long canal across Istanbul, uniting the Mediterranean and Black Seas. The project, which would divert traffic away from the highly congested Bosphorus Strait, would cost $20 billion, generating massive revenues while establishing new ports and transforming Western Istanbul into an island. In addition, it would bypass the Montreux Convention, allowing NATO naval vessels access into the Black Sea, infuriating Russia.
Yikes. So, I mean, obviously there's some geopolitical tensions from that aspect. But I thought that was really interesting to know about the new canals that are being built. And then, obviously China had plans to build a canal in Nicaragua. That is not happening. But there was a lot of environmental concerns around that happening, because you think about all the animals that are going to be displaced, the massive, it took 100 years for the Panama Canal to be constructed. Yeah. And so for a lot of these construction projects, it's like, especially for a lot of different governments, like, how long are these governments going to, be
see
around?
How quickly China gets theirs up and running. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, there is another canal that may happen in Thailand. So it is, I don't want to even try to pronounce this. So I'm just going to spell it KRA Isthmus Canal proposal. It's a potential route that would cut through the God, I am not going to pronounce this right, but KRA ISTHMUS in Thailand.
Yeah, you're right.
Isthmus, creating a direct link between the Andaman Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. So that one could potentially reduce shipping times and costs by bypassing the congested Malacca Strait, one of the world's busiest maritime routes. So thought that was that was I don't know. You kind of think of canals that like they've just always been there, like the Suez and the Panama. Like I had no idea that new canals were being built.